Hello, and welcome to another episode of Aligned. And happy Human Design New Year. So it will be January 19th when this episode is released. And January 22nd marks the Human Design New Year. And what do I mean by Human Design New Year? I'll talk about this a little bit more in the podcast episode. But on January 22nd, the sun will move through gate 41 in the human design wheel. And if you're familiar with human design or your human design chart, you'll know that there are 64 different gates that you can see on your chart. We all have these gates within our bodies, and the planets are also moving through each of these 64 gates. So we have kind of like our personal blueprint, and then we also have the transits, and the way that the environment and the ecosystem that we're in is energetically influencing us throughout the year. So the reason why gate 41 marks the start of the year is because the gate 41 is the gate of contraction. And it lives in the root center of the human design body graph. And what the gate of contraction brings is the adrenalized pressure to imagine something new. It's like the pressure cooker. So after we've closed out cycles, after we have come to a point of completion within our personal experience, it's the pressure and the contraction. Also, you can imagine like a baby being born. Before the baby can come out and have their first breath, it's the contraction that starts the process. So energetically, this is the point in time, again, not necessarily when we're blooming and growing. It's not spring, but it's when we're planting seeds. We're imagining a new possibility in reality. We're imagining what we desire for our future, and we're putting those seeds into fertile soil. This is why I've spoken so much about how I just detest the calendar year, the Gregorian calendar, because quite frankly, it's bullshit. And it was created for like accounting and convenience purposes. It has nothing to do with like our nature and the world and the seasons and the cycles. And so it can be really hard when we go into a new year, new calendar year, expecting something to happen, expecting a clean slate and a fresh start when we're still in a process of closing out. So again, this episode comes at such a beautiful and divine moment. Joining me today is Bry LeBlanc, who is a internet friend of mine. She's a creative, a storyteller. She is a 1-3 emotional manifester. And she joins me today to talk about thresholds and transition and how you can use words and intention to really anchor in change and to reflect and really get the most out of starting and closing cycles. So she shares with us her personal practice and how she uses words to set intentions for the year to come, to reflect on the year that has just closed. And yeah, I'm just so excited for you all to listen to this conversation. It was such a treat and a pleasure for me to be a part of. And I know that all of you are going to have some homework to do after listening. So without any further ado, I will let you guys get into this episode. Please let us know how you like it. Connect with Bry afterward. And if you haven't already, like, follow, subscribe the podcast, because we have really amazing conversations here with really great people. And I know you want to be a part of more of them. All right, I'll see you guys on the other side. This is exciting. This is the first time we're seeing each other face to face.
I know. That's the funny thing about social media is that you have these sort of like quasi parasocial relationships, and you're like, oh yeah, we've chatted before, but it's like, nope, this is the first time.
But that's when I love it in the way that it does kind of like act as that connection point to be able to interact with people you probably would never see otherwise. And if
Totally.
you have the capacity and the ability to utilize it and to translate it into something meaningful,
Yeah.
then there can be so much kind of beauty and value.
Yeah. And I'm sure, like, especially with you having the podcast and being able to invite people on, it's really nice to have like a space where you do it in like a really intentional way. Because obviously we could have like been like, hey, we should just have a coffee hangout one day, like a virtual coffee hangout. But like having these like juicy conversations is like so life giving.
Yeah, it really is. And it just sets the stage because I mean, I'm a deep person. I mean, I know you're a deep person too. And having this kind of framework around or like this container, it breeds just even more of that to come through. And I find that like, I think I do this podcast sometimes for myself more than I do it for anything else. And that comes through a lot, you know. There's
Mm-hmm.
just so much authenticity and integrity within every conversation. And I mentioned this in the last podcast episode that I recorded, but I don't plan these, you know, and I don't sit down and think like, who am I going to invite on the podcast and what are we going to talk about? There's no strategy involved because that's also not in any way in my design.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like let my intuitive muscles guide when, where, how, and then also what happens and how it unfolds.
Yeah, I love that because then it's more magic can unfold. And oftentimes when you plan, like it goes off script and that's where the juicy stuff is anyway. So having that, yeah,
Yeah,
allowing for that is really important. Well, I'm
totally.
glad to participate. I'm you're totally right. I'm a very deep person, and that's I think why I've struggled with social media so much in these last
Mhm.
years is that it's so hard for me to know how to like distill all of my wisdom into like 30 seconds, a minute, or like
Yeah,
even just like multiple videos. It's just yeah,
yeah,
it feels impossible. So, yeah.
yeah. And I honestly think like I think there's this collective constriction around our online world at the moment because there's this pull towards something deeper, more meaningful, more intentional, more authentic. And yet we're still trying to fit into like this old paradigm, kind of like the strategic, the structured, the kind of flashy way like the algorithm promotes things and stuff. And I think the constriction is necessary because it's I don't think the future is going to be like, okay, fuck social media entirely and like blow everything up, but it is going to morph and evolve around the needs that we have as a collective. And I just keep reminding myself like trust the process and like the because if I try to fight it, I could put myself into like a bitterness hole thinking about social media and like creating online and having an online business and all of that. But that doesn't serve anyone, including mostly myself and
Yeah,
my process. So just recognizing the constriction as like, this is just the predecessor for an inevitable change. And if I just continue to honor like my creative process and like do and share what it is that I want to do and share, then there's going to be a light at the end of the tunnel in some
absolutely.
capacity.
Yeah, and that's such an Aquarian inquiry because, like, the age of Aquarius is for sure trying to get us to connect in a different way, but also like more, yeah, to play with what we already have, and it doesn't want us to burn things to the ground. It wants to like us
Yeah.
to evolve and to evolve things
Mhm.
alongside us. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
so Aquarian. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah. I have an Aquarius midheaven.
Me
So
too.
I just
That's
like, oh, nice.
yeah, that's why I was like tapped in. I was like, yep, that's exactly what I've been like struggling against and also hoping for a long time.
Totally.
Is your rising
Um,
Gemini or Cancer?
my rising is Gemini.
Okay, me too. Yeah.
Hmm.
Which is
Yeah.
yeah, it's funny having like a midheaven ascendant squared to each other, because that's
Mm,
not always the case in charts, and I find that can be tough sometimes, but it's
yeah.
ultimately here for our betterment.
Yeah. So you and I have been connected for a while now, I want to say. And you posted something a few weeks ago, or right around sort of like the New Year transition, about the importance of like symbols and words specifically as anchors, and as I think you thresholds is the word that you particularly used. And the way that you spoke about it really, really resonated with me. Um, because in some way, this is a practice I've been doing for the last few years, is like, anchoring into a word for the year. And similar to everything, like I said earlier, I'm not strategic. My mind, neither are you. We have receptive minds, which aren't here to like be really narrow in how we think or structured in a way. So words find me at certain times, and it just started happening a few years ago. But it was something that like setting the intention of the word was less meaningful than like looking back at the end of the year and coming back to that word and seeing
Mm-hmm.
how it like how I carried that with me, whether I knew it or not, and like the insight that that whole trajectory sort of brought. And I would love to, yeah, just give you a little bit of space to speak to that practice for you and what it means and how you utilize that.
Yeah. Before I jump into all that, you were just saying like you have that word of the year that you set, I guess, like in January or like sometime in the
Yeah.
beginning of the year when it finds you. And I really resonated when you were sharing on, I think, on your stories, your process of like, yeah, how did that word appear this year? What surprised me? And because like you can set an intention and life is like, oh really? That's what something we were talking about too. It's like, oh really? And it like tests you and like pulls it all apart, and you're like, oh, I thought my trust year was going to be easy and it was like the hardest thing ever, but then ultimately it does build trust. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, I love that process too. But yeah, I find growing up, we always heard, an image has 1,000 words, and that's just something we really carried, where it's like, yeah, an image just is inherently really meaningful because it has depth and it has meaning, and it is able to hold more information because we can like project things onto the image, or like it holds, different parts of our consciousness, like especially if you have an image like I have photos here from when I was young, like I just look at it and it like all of a sudden I feel so much around it, like it encodes with feeling, with thought. And so even hearing that growing up, there's like some gravitas towards that. And then I don't know, in the last few years, as I have been working with clients one on one, I've just found that using words, especially as symbols, is so powerful, because not only can an image hold 1,000 words, but a word can hold like 1,000 feelings, and it can become this sort of beacon that we can align ourselves to. And so that's sort of like the precursor to what I'm about to say. But basically, when it's the new year, we want to change, like we're like, okay, it's a new year, new me. What can I do to like, herald this, these new parts or these new iterations that want to emerge? And we are always trying to find these practices that help us do that. And I think a lot of us have naturally come to this like word of the year thing, where it's like,
Mm-hmm.
what's one word that can hold, my intention for who I want to become and what I want to do. And in that way it becomes really powerful, because it's like it's that one word, it's simple, it's easy to come back to, we can like make art about it, we can write it in places, we can like journal about it, and it becomes something more meaningful than just that one word to us specifically. And that's been really helpful over the last few years, and especially like at the end of the year looking back being like, how was that word for me in reality? Because there's one thing with setting the intentions, and then there's another thing with like really processing it and seeing like how it actually embodied. So that's sort of like looking ahead, setting a word and reflecting on it. But I it was my best friend's birthday right before the new year, and I just was like, okay, I have a challenge for you as you embark on your 32nd year, what was your word of the year for last year like your in reflection word. So even if you set a word for last year, if you look back, what's that word like that symbolizes what you just went through? Because once again, who we were a year ago setting that word is not who we are now. So like if we're reflecting on everything we've just gone through, what word can maybe hold that journey? And then setting what is the word for next year that I hope to embody, hope to become. And then this was like a spark of wisdom. I love it when this happens, but I was like, and what's the verb connecting them? Because if we think about change, if we think about evolution, yes, we have the past, and yes, we have the future, and the change happens as we move from one to the other, but there is always a present moment, or there is always like that threshold that connects the two. And I love working with verbs, especially because they're so action oriented and evolutionary oriented, that it feels like it can carry us through.
Mm,
And in that way, it also feels like our word of the year becomes more playful, and it's not like just a beacon. It becomes this like thing that we're playing with and working towards, and it doesn't ever have to feel like it's on a pedestal when there's sort of like a
right.
verb that brought us into it. And so yeah, in that way, like words just become something bigger than what they are, and they carry, yeah, so much meaning to us. And this is sort of a practice that I used to do with my clients as well, where I was like sort of like a holistic coach, using like different modalities to help people with like to embody more of themselves. And like they would be really hyper focused on the things that they didn't want. And so I was like, okay, well, what word encapsulates the thing that you're struggling with? And then they would find a word, and then I would be like, okay, and now what do you desire? Like, what is it that you actually want? And like need more of, and want to feel more of, and what's the word that encapsulates that? And so it, yeah, just I find really anchors people into
Yeah.
like more, because we can like think and feel for years about things and just not ever feel like we're anchored. And yeah, I find that I've been using it in that way.
I love how you bring in the idea of using a verb because it brings in relationship to those two things. And even what you shared about the exercise with your clients. And sometimes it can be, yeah, easy to say, like, this is what I don't want, or this is what's not feeling good, and this is what I do want. But what about the relationship between those two things? And if you can find like the tether and the cord, then all of a sudden you can see that both of these are actually working in tandem together to get you to a certain place. But if you see it only as black and white, you're going to get stuck either here and eventually not really make any moves or momentum toward a future possibility.
Yeah, exactly. And something I also we talked about before jumping on this call was just how hard change can be. You know, like when you were reflecting on your trust year, you were like, oh boy, was I tested and forced to trust in different ways that were like really hard, you know. And I'd actually love to hear more of that from you in a sec. But I just find that change and evolution is harder than we ever think it's going to be. And we forget every time too. Like I'll have moments, especially being, you know, a woman who experiences a really intense cycle. Like I'll have moments where I'm like, okay, I'm changing. I'm so excited about it. Here we go. And then I'm tested and forced to kind of reckon with the ways that I haven't changed yet. And being a human can be really hard in that way. And that's why we really need to work with change as like an ally that is not trying to work against us. It's trying to help us evolve, but it also does bring out our shadow. It does kind of test us in difficult ways, and yet
Yeah.
it's there for our benefit. And so yeah, I just find having these practices that really focus on the transitionary parts of change is so crucial.
Yeah. And to kind of just bring in a little lens of like your human design into this, because you said as a woman you often like want these things and then go through this process, but to add even more color to that, like as an emotional manifester with the channel of transitoriness, speaking of transitions, because you're here to initiate and to take action and to have, you're going to have that natural urge within you to like surge forward
Mm-hmm.
and have an impact. But your emotional process is like always going to be going an up and down. And not only that, but to be governed by that specific channel, the channel of transitoriness, which is what makes you a manifester, or one of the things that makes you a manifester, and connects your emotional system to your throat center, your center of manifestation. It brings this like emotional need to like experience more and to try new things and to almost like create crisis sometimes so that you can go through the experiential emotional process that will get you to what it is that you want to experience, or the newness or the change or the greater like, and it's through the emotional depth that you get toward like more maturity within yourself and more self-understanding, and you get to see this bigger picture and have the whole experience.
Mm.
But knowing that that kind of is part of you and lives within you, it's like you have to honor the wave and you have to honor the process and you have to go through the cycles and work with transition.
Yeah. Yeah, that really resonates because I mean that's what I'm the makeup of what I'm living it with. But I haven't actually heard about the transitory part of human design because honestly, I know so much more about astrology and I've like engaged with my
Right.
human design chart. But yeah, being an
Mhm.
emotional manifester, like I've the surges of inspiration and being like, okay, go go go, and then just like the feelings of like okay, rest and depletion. Um, that honestly like riding those waves has been my like number one struggle and also gift from my healing journey because like I'll have those moments of depletion or even like moments of depression where I was like guilting myself and shaming myself when I was in those phases, and it just doesn't help, right? Like when you're sick, you don't want to be like guilting and shaming yourself for not being productive. Like that's not going to make you feel better. It's not going to help you heal. And then on a grander scale, it's like shaming yourself and guilting yourself when you're like stuck in these patterns. Once again, it's just not helpful. And that's been kind of like my number one thing. So that's why like working with change as an ally and like transition and thresholds has been such an initiation for me.
Yeah.
And I think that's maybe hearing that from you explains why I have especially just naturally come sorry these like practices have maybe naturally come to me.
Yeah. And so, kind of speaking to your process as well, I would love to hear what, in kind of looking back, what was your word at the start of last year? What was your word looking back? And what was your verb connecting them?
Mm-hmm. My word for last year was practice. So I just really wanted to kind of be in the beginner's mindset a little bit more and to just take my perfectionist on a little road trip instead of like having it be so destination oriented. Um, and that was definitely challenged in so many ways. Like I would have periods where I was like, for example, waking up early, doing a morning routine, like going on a walk every morning and just like really sticking to that. And it felt so good. And then I went on a trip and it totally, like, that totally fell apart. And so, like, I had a lot of these, yeah, like invitations to practice and to devote myself to practice. And then it would fall apart. And even with like creating, I'm such I have a lot in my fifth house of self expression, and that feels very true to me, and it feels like an important part of my being. But I also have like a really loud inner censor and perfectionist who like stops me from expressing myself and creating. And so I like finished the artist's way last year and then stopped doing the morning pages, and just like all these different experiences with practice came up where it was like good times where I was like, I proved to myself that I could practice something and stay consistent. And then times when it fell apart and like, how can I hold myself in a good way?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
then my word in reflection of last year was retreat. And it sort of has a bit of a double entendre because when you think about retreat, it's like, oh, I hid, I like retreated, I like pulled away from things, and that was really true. So like in the times where like my practices fell apart, or like I had those moments of depletion or sickness or low energy, I would retreat and I would resist my, inner creator. But then on the other hand, retreat is something that you like go on a retreat. Like I know you host retreats, and so like people want to retreat to like get away from everyday life and to just like intentionally be with themselves. And so I also did that, where I was like, okay, if I'm resisting this stuff, let me retreat in an intentional way and just like honor myself and be with myself and where I am now. And in that way, retreat sort of held, yeah, more, yeah, just more to it. And it wasn't black and white anymore. And that was really helpful. Um, and my word for this year is shine, because one of the things that I resist with, creating, especially on social media, is just imposter syndrome, perfectionist, comparing myself to others. And if you really think about like creativity and self expression, it just makes people feel better. Like when you create, when you express yourself, it makes you feel better and it makes other people feel better. And like that's why I picked the word shine, especially because it's like right now it's sunny outside today. I feel so much happier when it's sunny and the sun is just shining. It's just giving it and it makes me feel better. So how can I be like the sun that just does it, just shines, and then knows that that will like warm someone else, like in any form that takes. And my word for this year sort of like takes practice to another level, where now it's embody, and like bringing things down into my body, making it like more of a devotional thing, and not just thinking about things, but like actually embodying it, like walking the talk, so to speak. And yeah, it's already, all of that's already been challenged since the new year, and so it's already underway. But
Mm,
yeah, I one of the next things I want to do is like make art about these words so that it's like somewhere visible, because that's the other thing I find that I need, those visual reminders. So yeah. Yeah.
totally. I resonate with that a lot. I'm very visual, and things don't stick until I like can see them. And funny enough, both you and I have inner vision as our cognition, which is a sort of superpower. It's something that doesn't turn on until we're like actually living correctly as
Mm,
ourselves mechanically. But there's six different senses or cognition types and superpowers, and it's kind of like your unconscious intelligence. And for some people, it's touch, and it's like they can physically take in like information through physical touch. And for us, it's not a physical sense in a way. It's inner vision, which is like imagination, and it's being able to see something in here. And so for me, it's like I have to have visuals to be able to translate the physical into the non-physical or metaphysical, or like
yeah.
what exists when my eyes are closed kind of
Yeah.
thing. And so if I can't see it with my eyes closed, if I can't like picture something inside, I can't move against it, or it's a sign that like there's something that's not ready, not right, um, which is really interesting.
I
And I
love
think
that.
part of having a receptive mind as well is like taking in sort of like the visual field and like needing to see things. The way I learn
Absolutely.
at school, and like the way I realize like my memory is so visual. I started playing a lot of cards with my brother when I was living in Puerto Rico. And I realized that when I was counting cards, because we would play a lot of games where you're adding things up, the way that I count, because I can be very quick in seeing like, oh, it's this number and it's this number. And I realized that my process of counting is like I'm seeing a number line. Like I'm seeing 7, and then I'm seeing like, okay, if I how far away is 7 from 10? Okay. And like it's a very visual process. And I realize I'm like, I don't know that everybody thinks in that way. How interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about humans, is that like even just the way people think in their heads is all different. So I love
Mhm.
hearing that counting is really visual for you. Yeah, I'm a very visual. I always say like I'm a visual learner. I'm a visual learner. So like my how I have like so much stuff on my walls. I'm like such a maximalist with decoration, but it just really it like comforts me to be surrounded by like eye candy and visuals. And yeah, I I don't make vision boards that often, but I make collages a lot that don't necessarily like hold a specific vision, but it's just like bringing together like visuals in a new way. And yeah, it just really satisfies the physicality. And that's another reason why I love the word embodiment, is that like like you're saying, the inner vision is so ephemeral. It's like the liminal, it's like hard to capture, and it's like swirling around. And it's really easy for me to like be tapped into inner vision and be like, okay, yes, 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 yes. And then it just like goes away if I don't embody it. And embodiment can be like a dance move, it can be a piece of art, it could be like a journaling session, but like bringing the intangible into tangible form is embodiment. And so also that's why I love that word, because it's like multi-use. And so yeah, I love to hear that you do that too, where it's like, yes, I need the physicality, I need the tangible. Yeah, I had a sort of like a friend slash mentor who used to say, make the ineffable effable, and I love that too.
Yeah, that ties in a lot to like my reflection on my word for last year, which was bold.
Hmm. Such a
And
good
when I look at
word.
that, and like the intention going into it, it was like I had a year of like trust and having to be like sent to my knees, learn how to trust, like a lot of shadow work in that year. And coming out of it, and it was around kind of March when I was like, okay, fresh start. Now we're ready. Bold came to me because I realized like I had this whole cycle of like processing and healing and creating a relationship with certain shadow parts of myself that I had never seen before. And I wanted to then move into sort of the field of like embodiment and being bold in what I stand for, my vision, my conviction, translating kind of like what's inside into material reality. And like you said, it's like there's always these like just tests that we get and these kind of divine comedies that we go through. Because, of course, in setting that, my intention was like, this year's going to be fucking awesome. And in so many ways, it was. Like, I went into my retreat last year, which was one of the most incredible things I ever put together. The people that came together, like the transformations that were had, it was fucking
Oh,
awesome. And I was like on a high after that. I stayed in Portugal for another month in like my most aligned environment. And then I got brought back down. And what I a lot of what I learned was where there's still a break between what I'm envisioning and what I'm setting out to do and the embodied practice of that, and seeing where I was kind of like self-sabotaging and where I wasn't necessarily putting my money where my mouth was or practicing what I was preaching, and how easy it is for me, especially as a projector, because so much of my energy is outward focused. And it's very easy for me to kind of focus entirely on my clients, the relationships that I have, and like give and give and give, but not, but then I lose myself in a way, or I don't anchor back into like the devotional practices that I need to be like the cleanest, clearest vessel that I can be. Um, and that was like the biggest lesson. And I guess kind of if I were to look back, which I haven't gone through the practice of saying like, what would that be? Or what word would I go back and use? But the thing that's coming to me now is just like duality,
mm-hmm.
and how how much duality I experienced in this year of like the high highs and a new relationship and kind of like tasting everything that I've been working on, and then also having to sit with like there's still so much work to do. But it is the duality that then is able to bring like the embodiment back in and like
Mm-hmm.
remind me of what it is that I need to do and where I need to go and how and where I've fallen off track.
Yeah. I can't like I can't believe how much of a trip being a human is. Like truly, like when I hear, stories like that, or, I go through, I think everyone goes through that, where it's like we have these high highs and we're like, oh my God, life is amazing. It's never going to be bad again. And I don't know why we think that, but it always, like, we always get humbled, and like the other shoe will always drop, like we just need those, we need those highs and lows in order to like experience the full range of being human. And I think that's one of the hardest things about being in this like earth density, because I'm like our spirit selves are just like in unity and like probably just like in the purest frequency, and then down here we're like wading through the mud as like the lotus
Like
flower
in a
that's like,
washing machine.
yeah. We're like, we are the lotus flower. We're like beautiful and unique and like magical, and yet we're in the mud and we're in the washing machine, and it's
Yeah.
really really tough. So yeah, I love that duality was like the thing that kind of came up just now, because yeah, it's really humbling to be like, yeah, being a human requires that duality, and it's those ups and downs. And um what I didn't ever hear when I first embarked on my spiritual awakening and journey, and also my healing journey, is just how fucking hard it is. Like I really just, no one talked about it enough, honestly. And that was one of the most surprising things. Like of course, like you hear about shadow work and you hear about like the dark night of the soul, but experiencing it, oh my god, it's, you literally feel like everything is breaking apart and falling apart, and like you just don't know who you are anymore. And then eventually the pieces start building and connecting, and your strength returns, and it's just such a psychedelic trip.
It really
So
is.
yeah, yeah. And what's your word for this year? Has it landed yet?
Devotion. And this is something I had journaled on like earlier in the year and was just like noodling on the idea of discipline and devotion. And I sometimes see discipline as this very like corrective energy and yeah, like disciplinary. How did we learn what discipline meant? It was usually in school when we did something wrong and kind of being forced to behave in a way that we didn't
Mm.
always understand. And a lot of what I experienced at the start of my personal development journey and like taking in all of the information that I could find, and so much about just discipline and how it felt as if like we were had to fix ourselves, like that there's something broken that needs to be fixed, and how do we fix it? By being really disciplined and almost like treating ourselves the way that we were treated as kids. And I got really good at being disciplined. I have really good, like, once I commit to something, if I see value in it, I can be super disciplined. But there's something missing
Mm-hmm.
in discipline, which I see as like God, spirit, source, um, our higher self, like engaging within that practice. And that turns discipline into devotion. It's like having the North Star, having a greater understanding and awareness of like, why am I doing what I'm doing? And like doubling back in from a place of like reverence, devotion. There's love within that. There's
Mm-hmm.
self love within that. There is um, something more spiritual, emotional, personal within that. And so, having had this last year where like bold, having the duality of what that meant for me, seeing where there were gaps, this is the year where I kind of like come bring it back down to step one a little bit and just devote myself to my work, to my practices, to myself. Yeah.
It's beautiful. And it's like the word discipline is still a good word. Like, you know, when you talk about your vocation, sometimes you're like, oh, it's my discipline or whatever. And it's, there's so much goodness to it, but it feels
Mm-hmm.
very tied to like the masculine energy, or like the divine masculine.
Yeah.
And devotion kind of almost feels like you're bringing in the divine feminine into it. And
Yeah.
it's, yeah, it feels like you're the duality, right? Where you're like bridging the two by working on the counterbalance to
Yeah.
discipline.
Yeah. And you know, I love that we're again serendipitously having this conversation now. And we were supposed to record on Monday. It's Sunday now. And that feels very intentional as well because we're right about, so today's the 18th of January, and January 22nd is actually like the human design new year.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
There's
And
so
so
many
the
New
reason,
Years. I love it.
you know, and but what I love about this is like, so in human design, the same way as in astrology, we have transits, right? And so there's 64 different gates, which are like those individual flavors of energy. They're the building blocks that make up the greater, charts or human design characteristics that we can find within our in our body graph. But there's also the transits. And so the sun is moving during a calendar year through the different 64 gates. And it takes a year to travel through all 64. And you can look at that on like a wheel, the same way in astrology, you can map things out into a wheel. You see where the planets move. It's the exact same for human design. The human design gates also map to the astrological signs. And the start of the year or the wheel, it's not gate number 1. It's gate 41, which the sun transitions into on January 22nd this year. Gate 41 lives in the root center, which is a pressure center. It's our adrenaline, it's the stress, it's this pressure to begin. Gate 41 is the gate of contraction. And so this is the start of the year because it's the contraction that is necessary, the pressure that is necessary to birth the imagination, like the process of imagination and intention setting. And it's not, when I say the start of the new year, sometimes we think of spring as like in astrology, when Aries season starts, like that's kind of the new year. But this is like this is the planting of the seed before then the seed is blossoming. And yeah, it just feels like a very intentional time to be thinking about all of this.
Is it gate 41 is always aligned to an astrological transit?
Not that it's aligned to an astrological transit, but gate 41 would be in Capricorn.
Yeah. Every year.
If that makes sense.
That's super interesting. Yeah, one of my favorite things is that there's like in every culture there's a different new year, and what that means is just it takes the pressure off of January 1st being like the end all be all of new starts. And I love to hear that there's something in January, because then like if we have our new year on January 1st, I think a lot of people, well, and this is maybe like a bit of an older part of our culture, but that we would set resolutions and then, start going to the gym 5 times a week, or like eating clean, or like, dry January. And then by the end of January, you're like starting to peter off of it. And I like this idea that like there's a second start just a few weeks later, and then there's also the lunar new year that takes place really soon after, and then there's the astrological new year that takes place after that. And it's just like these opportunities to check in and like not necessarily have a new fresh start every time, because I don't think we can do that all the time either. Like we need time to integrate and to be in the process of change. But there is something really beautiful about just having those like markers and those thresholds. And that's why I really love the word threshold, because it's just like, okay, we're always evolving, we're always changing. And so like naming markers of time, or like working with the seasons, or looking outside of you for evolution and change, and like anchoring into something as a threshold is really beautiful. I know that in like ancient cultures, and like even today, there's a lot of cultures who work with like initiations. So like, the initiation of, starting your bleed, and like the process of becoming a woman, if you present that way, is such an initiation. But we've lost a little bit of that. And so I like that, in at least, if you're more spiritual, or if you're connected to nature, that thresholds and initiations are like a little bit more present. And it's because we need it. Like we're always evolving. We need to have those markers.
Yeah. And I just always find like around the calendar new year, which again is when, for most people who aren't really tapped into a lot of these different kind of energetic influences that we have, there's that strong pressure, new year, new me. And the Gregorian calendar is bullshit.
Yeah.
It's literally not based on anything besides like tax and accounting for the Romans or the Greeks or whoever the fuck it was. It was all like a logical, disciplinary um, creation to make things easier for people in power. And I always just feel that so deeply because, I mean, the holidays, especially in our collective now, have become such like hooplas, and there's so much going on and there's so much energy, and that can be very enticing in a way. You can almost kind of like attach, you're around people all the time, and part of what human design gives us the language to understand is how we absorb and take in the energy of like the world around us, the environment we're in, the people we're interacting with. And so when the holidays bring all of this like interaction, this gathering, we're taking in all this energy and then we're adding it to this collective pressure of like start fresh, start over. And then all of a sudden January 1st kind of hits. And for me, always like those first 2 weeks of January, I'm still purging. And it always feels like such a slap in the face because I, for so long, had the idea of like, but no, like we're starting new, we're starting over. And we're not done yet, you know? And even also we can bring in like the Chinese horoscope as well. And I think their New Year's in February.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the more I've given myself like grace to finish the cycles after I'm supposedly supposed to be done, has been so nourishing. And it kind of goes back to what you mentioned earlier, speaking to kind of just like your emotional process. And that has been very similar for me. But so much of the healing is just like allowing and feeling and moving through things. And now, as we approach kind of when the sun moves into gate 41, now I'm starting to feel like a little bit more of that momentum, like
Yeah.
even the word for the year coming in. And it just takes a little bit extra time. And then I'm going to plant seeds right now that come March and springtime are probably going to start to move, and I'll see more forward progress tangibly and physically then. But I just think it's so important to kind of like take the time and the space to sit in that contraction
Yeah.
period, because what contraction brings, and contrast too, like the discomfort and things that we're working through and moving through are showing us where we want to go. It's the discomfort that shows us what we want to step into as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And if you think about birth, like, and I love that you use the word contraction because, I mean, I've never given birth, but from what I hear, it's painful, not just for the mother, but for the child too. Like moving through the birth canal or even getting a C-section, like it's like its own form of trauma. And I don't mean that trauma capital T, but like it's like a challenging, difficult, full of discomfort type of experience. And I think when we're like, yeah, setting intentions and like wanting to really evolve and change, we forget that it's like, yeah, sometimes it's like really hard. And I think that's especially present when we're grappling with the distance between who we are now and who we want to become. Like, I think that's the thing that a lot of us struggle with is like being like, why am I not there yet? Or like why am I still stuck in these patterns? And it's hard, and changing is hard. And so yeah, I like I like remembering that, you know, the birth experience isn't sunshine and rainbows, you know, like even, you know, planting seeds and the concept of germination, like a seed cracking open must like be hard for the seed, and like finding its way through like the dense ground that like doesn't have as much of like the flowing water yet. Like it's difficult. And
Yeah.
I think if we're able to like hold that and embrace that and like acknowledge that, then we're able to be like softer with ourselves, because I think when things are hard, we are hard on ourselves. And then there's none of that duality. There's none of that like nurturing and support that like hard things need. And that's why, like, you know, the birth process is hard, but then the mother gets to hold the baby and like soothe it and nurture it. And like they have that first really intentional bonding experience. And like, then that's what we need through hardship. And that's, I think, the number one thing that I've worked on and I'm still working on. It's like a lifelong process.
Totally. Totally. Well, amazing. This has been such a fruitful conversation, and I'm sure that we could probably keep going and keep going. But is there anything else that you want to share as it relates to this topic for anyone that is listening?
Hmm. I think it's so important that we nurture ourselves. Like the thing we sort of just landed on, I think is a perfect ending point, because we've talked a lot about words as symbols and even like images as symbols, and our words of the year and everything, and working with even like no matter what you do this year, no matter what intention you set, no matter like what practices you hold on to, I just hope that you're able to remember to nurture yourself through it, because we are constantly evolving. The collective is being put through the ringer right now, and on an individual level as well. Like everyone is goes through the muck and the shit, and so through it, just please nurture yourself, because it's hard, and it is hard, and it will be hard, and bring a little bit of that softness to yourself. That's a reminder that I always need to hear. So that's what I'll end off with.
That. And yeah, I agree. It's the same for me. That's always like the number one lesson throughout all of these different cycles and transitions. So how, for anyone who is listening and wants to connect with you, because also we kind of just dove right into the conversation without any sort of formal introduction, but how can people connect with you?
So I'm on Instagram as creating with Bry. I'm going to be posting more on there this year, and that's one of my goals as well, is to just create and express myself and finally like bring my wisdom and my shine to the world. And I also created a community space called Nature People Magic, and I'll be running more digital workshops that help you embody your natural magic and like work with different modalities. So those are kind of like the two main places. Yeah, so lots to come, but that's where I'm at right now.
Amazing. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing all that you do and share and how you share your shine this coming year.
Thank you.
Thank you for
I'm
being here.
excited to see your devotion come through as well.
Thank you.